Welcome to Highline Community College Library Quarterly Staff Meeting. Hey, this is the top 10 library Excel questions. Hey, if you want to download this workbook and follow along, top 10 library Excel tricks, click on the link below the video. Go all the way to the bottom of the page to the other section and you can download this workbook. Hey, here's our 10 topics. And if you click below the video on the Show More button, there's a table of contents with minute hyperlink, so you can jump to any section of this video. Hey, we're going to start with example number 10. We have a data set. Here are a bunch of titles of books that have been checked out, and here's the number of days they were checked out. Our goal is to count how many total books were checked out and the total days from this column. Now, this is a large data set, so I want to quickly be able to jump to the bottom and see the last record in this data set. We can use Ctrl Arrow. So check this out, Control down arrow. Wow, over 15,000 records. Control up arrow goes to the top. Now that keyboard Control Arrow jumps to the bottom of the current region, meaning when it bumps into the first empty cell, it will stop one above. Now we can use that keyboard because we're going to use a formula over here to count how many books were checked out and then use the sum function to add this column up. But we're going to have to highlight that range, and clicking and dragging can take a long time. So let's start with cell E7. We want to use the sum function. Now notice I'm using Excel 2010, but anything we learn in this video can work in Excel 2007, 10, or 13. And the ribbon tabs are hidden. You can either right-click, minimize, unminimize, so you check that, or you can use the keyboard shortcut Control F1. That's a toggle, Control F1. Now, normally we'd go up and use the sum function, but the sum function is special. And you can actually see when you hover your cursor, there's this screen tip that pops up, and it shows you the keyboard, Alt equals. The sum function is the only keyboard of the 400 built-in functions that has a keyboard. So I'm going to try this, Alt equals. Now, usually the functions try to be polite. They try to guess, but that's completely wrong. Notice the dancing ants are dancing around. So as long as they're still dancing, you can redirect it to wherever you want. Now, I want to click in the top cell, and I don't want to click and drag. And I don't want to do Control down arrow, because that would just jump to the bottom. But if we do that keyboard with the Shift key, we'll highlight all the way down to the bottom, and the sum function will be looking at the correct range. So I'm holding Control and Shift and down arrow. No way. Look at that. The dancing ants all the way down to 15,000. Now I can hit Enter. Now, and then I scroll up. There you go. We've added up the total days that the books have been checked out for this period. Now I want to count how many records there are, or how many titles have been checked out. Now you'd think that we could use the count function, but the count function counts numbers only. Now I'm going to type this formula. There's no keyboard for the count or other functions. So I'm going to type an equal sign and then C. Notice the equal sign tells Excel you're doing a formula. The C gives us a drop down with all the C functions. So I'm going to type out count. Or COU. And notice there's a bunch of count functions. It's great you can read. This one says counts the cells that contain numbers. That's not what we want. I can either click on COUNTA or down arrow. This one says counts the number of cells that are not empty. And that function will work for counting text. I'm either going to double click that from this drop down or hit Tab. Click on the top cell, Control Shift down arrow. Now watch this. I could hit Enter, but I'm going to hit Shift Enter. Shift Enter actually puts the thing in the cell and jumps up, which is convenient in that particular case right there. So two functions. COUNTA counts non-empty cells, good for counting words. The sum function, good for adding. And then Control down arrow, or if you want to highlight, Control Shift down arrow. All right, let's go to our next sheet, 9. Now here we have a similar data set. We have our title and the card number for the person who checked it out. And we want a method for easily finding a particular card number in which books they've checked out. So I'm going to use the filter feature. Field names or column headers at the top Records are in rows. If you have your data set up like that, you can use filter. You can go to data and click on the filter button. Or there's a keyboard, Ctrl Shift L. Ctrl Shift L. Oh, look at that. It not only made this orange, but it put these little auto filters. This is a toggle. You can either click and click off or Ctrl Shift L, Ctrl Shift L. Now I want to come to the card number field and click on the drop down, the auto filter. And we have a few options here. We have a huge list. I can unselect all and scroll all the way down to 9446. It's kind of hard to do it this way, but you can do it this way. Oops, there it is right there. And click OK, and I can see immediately which books card number 446 has checked out. I'm going to come over here, clear the filter. Probably a better way to do it is to come here to the search and type 9446. Oh, that's absolutely awesome. And then click OK. So filter. And this is just a simple example, but there's all sorts of amazing filters. Let's uncheck this and look at one more. You can come over here and you can search. What books have angel in them? And there are all the books that have angel in them. So each one of the titles has the word angels in it somewhere. Now let's turn off the filter. Either clear the filter if you want to get rid of the filter and turn off the auto filter. With the drop downs, either click here or Ctrl Shift L. Hey, let's go look at our next example, example 8. We want to look at how to create a little calendar. But this calendar has to be just for workday. So I need to enter the dates Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So I'm going to start out. I know that 5/13/2013, that date is Monday. Now, in the corner of every highlighted cell is that little box that's called the fill handle. This cursor is called the selection cursor. You can see that little fill handle there. But watch this. When I move my selection cursor close to the fill handle, it turns to a crosshair, or an angry rabbit, as I like to call it. If you click with your angry rabbit on the fill handle and click and drag, it will increment dates. So that's a great way. You don't have to type out these dates. If you want all the dates, notice 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 sequential. But look at this smart tag. And I may have to scroll up to show you this. For dates, absolutely beautiful. Fill days, that's the default. Weekdays, months, even years. So if I click weekdays, now it's skipping 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and it skips to the next Monday. Now, I'd not only like to have these dates, but I'd like to see explicitly Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday, etc. So we can do that with date number formatting. Now, over in the home ribbon, we have a number group, and there's some built-in formats here. But to get the complete list of formatting, or the complete power to do any kind of number formatting we want, we can either click on this dialog launcher or use the keyboard Control 1. Now, I've highlighted the cells, and I use Control 1. On the Number tab, Date, here are a bunch of built-in options. But we want to look at Custom. Custom gives us the full ability to format this however we want. Notice M means month, D means day, and Y means year. But watch this. In the type box, highlight and type a D. You could see the sample here. It shows just a 13, 2 Ds. 3D shows the 3-letter abbreviation, and 4D shows the entire word for this particular day. I'm going to leave it abbreviated, and then I'm going to type a comma. D is for day. M, you can see up here the preview starting to emerge, /D/year. So absolutely powerful to know custom number format. You can format this to look however you want. Now, that doesn't change the underlying date number in the cell. It just displays it in a certain way. Absolutely beautiful. Look at that. Now we can fill out our calendar. We have Sue here, Todd, Chin. And we can fill it out as we want. So dates, smart tag to fill just weekdays, and custom number formatting. Now let's go look at our next example, sheet 7. Now here's a budget example, and in this example we want to learn a little bit about formulas and about cell references, the difference between relative and absolute cell reference, and we want to learn a little bit more about number formatting. Now, we have some revenue, and this is the funds coming in, and we want to estimate our expenses or funds going out based on a percentage in this cell. And we want to be able to change this percentage and have all of our formulas update. Now, we need a percent here, and we want to look at basically one of the number one mistakes that people make in a cell. Let's say we want 2%. People will type a 2 in a cell, Ctrl Enter, and then come up and use the drop down for percent, or use the percent that adds percent symbol with no decimals showing, or Control 1 and then using percentage over here and setting whatever number of decimals you want. Right? So I'm just going to use the drop down. Oh, you thought you were going to get 2%, but number formatting, this percentage number formatting, does exactly what percentage number formatting is supposed to do. It slides the decimal 2 places and adds a percent symbol. Now, I want to wipe away that number formatting to see that a 2 is really in the cell. I'm going to come up here, and a great trick is apply general. And it doesn't matter if you have currency, accounting, date, percentage, time. If you apply general, it wipes away all the number formatting and shows you actually the thing that's in the cell. So really what you're supposed to do, if you want 2%, you type 0.02. And now when you apply your percentage, and you can see the preview there, right? 2.00%. All right, so we over here want 45%. I'm going to show you 2 ways you can do that. You can type the decimal and then apply the number formatting. And sometimes that's appropriate because your formulas are spitting out decimals, and then you want to apply percentage number formatting. But watch this. If you really just have a single cell and it's convenient to type it out, you could type 45.00. Now, right now, if I hit Enter, it would be the number 45. But if you type a percentage symbol, you're saying, hey, please apply percentage number format as I type. Control Enter. And you can prove that the actual decimal 0.45 is in the cell by coming up and applying general number format. Remember, any calculations, they're not using the number 45. It's using 0.45. For our example, for every $1, 45 cents is going to be used up as expense. Now, that's just a little bit about the percentage number format and one of the common mistakes. But now let's do a formula. Now, our formula, we're going to type an equal sign. And I'm going to get the cell reference by clicking, pointing and clicking with my mouse. And I'm going to say that, whatever's in that cell reference, times this 45%. So when I hit Tab, it calculates our estimated expense. And the beauty of Excel, of course, is that now I can simply change this to 55, and our formulas update. All right, now we come over here and we type equals the February revenue times the percentage. Now notice, what am I doing? I'm actually clicking on B14 every time. Tab equals one cell above times B14. Tab equals one cell above times B14. So I don't want to have to waste my time typing in lots of different formulas. I want to see how to create a single formula right here that I can enter and then copy it over. But the key is there's 2 types of cell references we're going to use. A relative, which means relative to me, the formula, where am I going to look? Always one cell above, times a absolute cell reference or a locked cell reference. So I'm going to delete all this, come over here, equals, click on the January revenue times B14. Now, if I enter this and copy it over, I'm going to get 0 because those are relative cell references. It means from my point of view, the formula, I'm always going to look one cell above times 1, 2, 3 cells below. So I don't want C14. I really want it locked on B14. I'm going to hit Delete. And I'm going to put this into edit mode with the F2 key. The way you lock a cell reference or make it absolute is you make sure your cursor is touching and you put $signs. And the way you do it is you hit the F4 key. Now, that cell reference is no longer relative. It is absolute, locked on B14. So now when I Control Enter, by the way, Control Enter puts the thing in the cell and keeps the cell selected, which is convenient because now I want to use my angry rabbit and click and drag to copy that formula. Now I'm going to come to the very last cell and click and hit F2 to put it in edit mode. And no way. One cell above, relative cell reference, the revenue for April times my 55%. Now I want to do a formula for net income. These are both relative cell reference. I'm going to say equals. Please always look 2 cells above me minus 1 cell above me. Control Enter and copy it over. Click in the last cell and hit F2. Sure enough, there is our formula. Relative cell reference is always for the month, getting the revenue and the expenses. And the beauty of Excel is now we realize that it's not really 55%. It's 75%. We type that and Control Enter, and all of our formulas update. All right, let's go to sheet number 6. Here we want to talk about a pivot table. Now, pivot tables are very powerful. They can quickly do a bunch of things much more easily than formulas. Our goal here is, well, first we have a data set. We have field names at the top and records in rows. Title, days checked out. And we've already looked at this data set earlier with when we did the sum and the COUNTA function. But our goal here is I want to not count all of the titles. I want for one particular title, tell me how many times it was checked out. Notice there's duplicates, right? So this is a calculation with a condition. We're not going to count all of these like we did with COUNTA. I want to count with the condition, count all the hitchhiker's guides in this column. Count all the 5th businesses in this column. Pivot table is perfect for that. Now, pivot table can do a few amazing things. First, it'll create a unique list. So if we create a pivot table and say, hey, look at the title field, it will list exactly one occurrence. It will not list the duplicates. It'll list each item a single time. Then we'll simply tell it to count either the books or add up all of the days checked out. All right, here's how you create a pivot table. One cell in the data set is selected, and you don't have any data surrounding. There's blanks all the way around the data set. Click in a single cell and go up to Insert, and click on the pivot table. Now, it's polite. It guessed the correct range, and the reason why is because we have blanks all the way around. And it's asking us, do you want it in a new sheet or an existing sheet? I'm going to click the default is new sheet and click OK. It has given us like a little preview of what the pivot table is going to look like and what's called a field list. There's our 2 fields or column headers. Now, the row labels is like this picture right here. If we were to drop this title into the row, it would give me exactly one occurrence of each item. This is called a unique list. So I'm going to click the title and drag down to row labels. And sure enough, at the head of each row is each book listed a single time. Now, if I want to count how many times 1984 got checked out, how many times the fine balance got checked out, I need to drop the title into the values. Now watch this. By default, when I drag this here, it counts. The reason why is because that field contains text. Right? So this book, 1984, was checked out 576 times. The fine balance was checked out 9 times. And on with the rest of the counts. Now, what if we wanted to not only count how many times each book got checked out, but we wanted to count or sum the total days checked out? So all we have to do is drag to the values areas. Now notice earlier in the video we used the sum function to add all the days, but this is a conditional calculation. I don't want to add up all the days. I want to add up all of the days checked out just for this one book. So it was checked out 576 times for a total of 8,525 days. Checked out 9 times for a total of 123 days. Absolutely amazing. Unique list and conditional calculations with a pivot table. All right, now this sheet says sheet 1. We were on sheet 6. This is where the data was, right? This sheet I want to rename and call it. So give it a name like 6, 7, etc., or something better than that. Right-click and point to rename. Or you can double-click. I'm going to call this PT for pivot table and enter. All right, so that was example 6. Let's go to example 5. Now, in this example, we have some books, and we have the due date. And we need to not only calculate what today's date is, but calculate the number of days this book is past due. This is going to involve date math. Now, date math is great because if you have 2 dates, you can make a formula that will calculate the number of days between 2 dates. Now, we want this template to update. So when I open it tomorrow, today's date will be there. So guess what? There's a function called today. So equals today. And it's an argumentless function. You just enter today, open parentheses, close parentheses, and it will always show you today's date. So now we have 5/14. This date is bigger than these dates. We can simply take the later date minus the earlier date, and it will tell us how many days are between these 2 dates. So I'm going to type an equal sign. Now, earlier I showed you how to click with your mouse and then make some calculation. I'm going to type a minus sign and then click. Notice the dancing ants. But watch this. I'm going to click escape. The escape key got me back to what the cell contained before I put it in edit mode, which in this case was empty. I'm going to type equals, and instead of the mouse, I'm going to use my arrow keys. Left arrow, minus, left, left. When you have cell references that are going into your formulas that are very close to where the formula is, it's faster to use your arrow keys. Control Enter. Wow, 49 days. And then instead of clicking and dragging like we did before, I want you to notice there's stuff in this table to the left. So if that's the case, and this is especially a great trick when you have a big table, you can point to your fill handle when you see your angry rabbit, double-click and send it down. Click in the last cell and hit F2, and no way. Later date minus earlier date. This book is 20 days overdue. Now, the reason that Excel can do date math like this is because dates are actually serial numbers. The very first day in Excel history is January 1st, 1900. That day equals 1. January 2nd is 2. 3/26/2013, well, I'm not sure what number that is, but it's a big number, a lot bigger than 1, 2, 3, etc. But watch this. When you enter a date, and I'm going to type this date down here and show you. So I'm going to type 3/26/2013, Control Enter. I've typed a date. I look up in the formula bar. I can see the date. But guess what? A date number format was applied as you typed. We saw a similar example just a little while ago when we did percentage number format. We were adding a percentage number format as we type. What's our rule? If you want to wipe away all the number formatting and see what's actually in the cell, you can apply general. Now, escape, I haven't clicked general. Notice when I typed in that cell, it says date because that date number format was applied. Oh, look at that, 41,359 days since December 31st, 1899. Now, watch this, 5/14/2013. When I typed that, it applied the date number formatting. If I apply general, those are the numbers that sit under the dates, and that is how Excel can do date math. Now, it would be ridiculous to require people to do this, so that's why they programmed it this way. These are the dates you see on the surface of the spreadsheet. The date number format is like a facade that sits on top of these serial numbers. Absolutely amazing. All right, now let's go look at our next example 4. There's a few other examples. I'm going to use my arrows to expose more of the sheets. So I'm going to click, 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 click. All right, now this example, I'm actually going to zoom in. You can either use this little, I'm going to zoom out. You can either use this scroll bar right down here, or you can hold Control and use the wheel on your mouse. In and out with that little wheel. All right, we got to talk about time. Time is similar to date. It's got a number format, time, time. And you subtract the later time minus the earlier time. But just like dates, dates are serial numbers. They're number of days. Time is the proportion of one 24-hour day. So the way Excel, if we type in a time, for example, I'm going to type in 8:00, and this is how you have to type time, colon, the hours, the minutes, space, and then PM, AM. You can actually do military time, and there's some other times, but this will work just fine. Actually, I want AM. And then 5:00 space PM. I'd like to calculate the number of hours. Now, I can do this one on my fingers. This is 8 hours. But here's what's underneath that time number formatting. It's the proportion of one 24-hour day. So how many did we work? I'm going to do a formula here. Equals 8 divided by 24. So under there is 0.33. For 5, it's equals 12 plus 5 is 17 divided by 24. That means how far through the 24-hour day have we gone? These are the serial numbers that sit under time. So if we're going to do a calculation like, hey, later time minus earlier time, and these are the actual numbers that Excel uses, what are we going to do with this? Sure, 0.375 is 8 hours. That's a proportion of 8 hours as compared to 24. But I need to show 8. So how do I do it? Well, how did they go from actual integer hours down to decimals? They divided by 24. So once you get your final answer of what proportion of 24 hours you used in a day, you have to put it in parentheses and say times 24. Or I'm sorry, that's 9 hours, not 8. I wish I could do math in my head. I guess that's why I use Excel all the time. All right, so let's see how this works. Equals, open parentheses, always the later time minus the earlier time. Close parentheses, times 24. That's how you can calculate from time integer hours. Now this is a partial hour worked here. Double click and send it down. 6 hours, 4.8, etc. Now if you had to calculate this times a wage or something like this, it would work out just fine. All right, so time is a little tricky. You have to understand that it's a proportion of one 24-hour day. Now let's look at this same example, but let's say our payroll required that we round to the nearest 5 minutes. So I'm going to click on the sheet 3. Whoops, this already has all of the answers here. There are a number of rounding functions in Excel. The round does normal rounding. But MROUND allows us to round to a certain amount. Now remember, we're dealing with time. So I want to figure out, if I'm rounding to the 15 minutes, I got to figure out the decimal for 15 minutes. 15 minutes in a day, 15 minutes, 60 minutes in an hour, 24 hours in a day. So how do I calculate the total minutes in a day? Because if I'm going to compare minutes, I need not hours, but total minutes. Well, no problem. I say equals 24 hours times 60 minutes. So 1,440 minutes in a day. Now I could just come down here and say equals 15 divided by 1,440. That's the amount. Now this is a fraction, and it'll have some decimals, but that's the number I can type into the MROUND and say, hey, MROUND, round to the nearest 15 minutes as Excel sees 15 minutes, right? So 0.0142. We could actually reduce this. If we're using this a lot, we might not want to type this out all the time. So how many 15-minute chunks are in a total day filled with minutes? I'm just going to say, hey, do that division right there. Oh, 96. And then I put the wrong labels here. Here, what I meant to do here was say equals 15 divided by that, which I already did down here, sorry. And now I wanted to see how many, take 1,440 divided by 15. All right, so there's 96. So now, instead of typing in this number every time I create a formula like this, I can do 1 equals 1 divided by 96. All right, so that'll be the number that we type into our rounding. All right, now check this out. We need to round all of these to the 15 minutes. You check in, you check out, but it's always rounded to the nearest 15 minutes. So I'm going to use the equals MROUND function. Returns a number rounded to the desired multiple. It just wants the number. And remember, that's a number formatting there. So it's not like 7 integer 48 minutes. It's a decimal. So that's why when we comma and get to this multiple, we have to know what the decimal for 15 minutes is, which is 1 divided by 96. And that is a relative cell reference. Notice when we copy the formula this way, the blue one will move over there. And when we copy it down, it'll boop, 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 to each person who works in the library. I'm going to drag this over. And notice I dragged over with the angry rabbit. Now I'm going to double click and send it down. And it works on 2 formulas, right? Because there's stuff to the cell. The way that works is a double click, and it actually keeps looking. And when it sees an empty cell, then it stops. By the way, we have stuff to the left. That trick works with stuff to the right, or if stuff is below it. So I can see very clearly that this is working fine. Absolutely beautiful rounding to the nearest 5 minutes. So now I can do later time minus earlier time times 24. Control Enter and double click and send it down. All right, so rounding to the 15 minutes, we used MROUND and figured out that 1 divided by 96 is how Excel sees 15 minutes. All right, number 2, we're getting to the top 2 here. This example, and I can see I don't have the right sheet. This sheet right here is supposed to be next to 2. Watch this. I'm going to move this sheet. So I'm going to click on it and drag up. Notice the piece of paper and the little arrow. So wherever I drop it, boop, that's where the sheet will go. So our goal here is we have books and authors. And I want to have a drop-down list that I can select any book and then have a formula that will go look up the author on this sheet. I'm sorry, look up the book title on this sheet and tell me what the author is. All right, so we're going to do that all on a different sheet. Our database with all our information is on this sheet. We need a formula to do some lookup magic on this sheet. We're going to do 3 things here. We're going to define a block of data as a defined name. We're going to do it twice. Then we're going to use data, create a drop-down list, and then we're going to use a formula, actually use the VLOOKUP function to look up. So for example, if we look up East of Eden, we want the VLOOKUP to tell us who is the author, John Steinbeck. All right, so we need to name. Now let's hover our cursor up here. Oh, that's the name box. So if you highlight this data right here, now notice earlier we used Ctrl Shift Arrow to enter a range into a function. We can use a similar trick here. Watch this. Control Shift, and I'm going to right arrow and then down arrow. Totally awesome. So very quickly we're allowed to highlight a range. Now with that range highlighted, I'm going to click in the name box. And now I can, instead of using a cell range, type a name, and that name will always refer to this highlighted range. All right, you ready? So I'm going to call this VTable. Or no, I'm going to call this lookup table. Don't do this. Don't type a space because defined names can't have space. No spaces. All right, and then when I hit Enter, that range now is called lookup table. And there's even a drop-down you can point to it, right? And it highlights the whole table. Now, we're also going to need, that's the table to look stuff up. We look something up in the first column. Our formula will get the name from the second column and deliver it to the cell. But we also need, for data validation, our name of the book. So I'm going to click in the top cell, Control Shift down arrow. Click in the name box. It's called data v validation. So I'm going to put data v drop down, no spaces, and then enter. So now I have two defined names. That highlights the whole table. This one highlights just that column. Now, in case you need to edit these or delete these names, we can go up to the Formulas ribbon and Name Manager. Very important. Here's our two names, and if you have a problem with them, need to expand them or delete them or edit them, you click Edit. You can click Delete. You can even click Create Your Names here. Now, those are our defined names. I'm going to go over to the sheet called VLOOKUP. Now, I want to create a drop down. And luckily, there's on the Data ribbon, there's something called Data Validation. And it will allow us to create a drop down that will look over to that table and only allow us to put books that are from our list. So with that cell A2 selected, I go to Data Validation. The default is any value, which makes sense, right? So in Excel, you can type anything. But we don't want to allow anything. We want to allow a list. And it says, where's the source? I need to create a formula here, which formulas always start with equal sign, equals. You know, I don't remember. I think it was something like data, but I don't remember what it is. So I'm going to use the keyboard F3. And there, F3 gives me my paste name list. And so I'm going to put data v dropdown. I'm going to double click it. And there it is, right there. Now, you could put an input message, which means every time you click in the cell, it will pop up. And you can even have an error message, something like please try again or select from dropdown. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to select the in dropdown and that name, click OK. And now, sure enough, that entire list is there. You got to be kidding me. That is just beautiful. Anytime we select something, now we want the author. So now we're going to look at a formula, VLOOKUP. Well, we're looking up East of Eden. And let's go look at this table. Remember, I want to deliver the author name to this cell. So the function VLOOKUP is going to look this up, take it in its brain. Remember East of Eden. We'll tell it to look at the whole table. It'll race through this first column. When it finds East of Eden in the first column, we will tell it, hey, go and get the thing from the second column. It'll get John Steinbeck and bring it back to the cell. So that name will be there. And whatever we select, it'll get the right name. All right, so we're going to create our formula, equals, and V is for vertical. So our table on that other sheet is listed vertically. So VLOOKUP. There are 4 arguments. And as we type the different arguments into our formula, the screen tip will be polite. And the argument we're entering will be in bold. So the first thing it's asking is, hey, what do you want me to look up? I'm going to look up East of Eden. I'm going to type a comma. And the table array, well, I need to give it that whole table. F3, lookup table. Comma, to get to the column index. Which column has the thing I want to retrieve and bring back to the cell? The second column. First column has the book. Second column has the author. So I simply tell it by typing a 2. Now we type a comma, and we get to our 4th argument. Approximate match is used for taxes and commissions. We want to do exact match because we're looking up exactly the title of the book, and we want to do an exact match. So I'm going to put false. Close parentheses, and you got to be kidding. VLOOKUP looks up John Steinbeck. If I change this to Grapes of Wrath, well, it's still picking the same guy. Catch 22, or whatever book from our list. Absolutely amazing. All right, let's go to our last example. We're going to go to sheet number 1 to see number 1 library Excel trick. Here's the deal. We have a list of books. These are the books that should be on the shelf according to our records. And we went out and counted them. And these are the ones we actually have on our list. So we need to compare this list to this list. What we're going to ask is this book in this list? Right? If it's not, then we need to figure out where it is. Now we're going to use the match and the ISNA functions. Now the match function is a lookup function. But what it does is if I say, hey, match, look up Lord of the Rings, it's going to tell me the relative position of that book in this list. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's the 6th item, so match will return a 6th. If I ask, hey, look up the Da Vinci Code, it'll return 1 because it's the first item in this list. Relative position. So let's see the match. And you'll notice that it has similar arguments. Lookup value, that's the same thing we saw in VLOOKUP. I'm going to look that up, comma, lookup array. I'm going to click in that top cell and watch this. I'm going to Ctrl Shift down arrow. And I need it locked because I'm going to copy this formula and I want it absolute. So I'm going to hit the F4 key and watch. It not only puts the dollar signs in, but it jumps the screen back in view. Comma, I'm going to use exact match. Notice this function uses a 0, whereas VLOOKUP uses false. Now, all of that is kind of random. The false and the 0 just say, hey, do an exact match. Ctrl Enter, and double click and send it down. Sure enough, we get a 6 and a 1, and that's what we're interested in. NA means it's not available. That book is not in our list of the counted inventory items. So now instead of seeing NA, I want true. So I'm going to put this cell in edit mode, and I'm going to ask the question, is this an NA with is NA? There we go. And I'm going to put the match inside is NA. Control Enter, double click and send it down. And now I have trues. That means the book is supposed to be in our library, but it's not. Or it's this list is not only the ones we counted, but the ones that are checked out, right? So we have to figure out where this book is. It's not on our shelf, and it's not checked out. All right, that was 10 amazing library Excel tricks for the Highline library staff meeting. We'll see you next video.